In my last video, I looked at Pokemon cards from the original series that featured other Pokemon in their artwork. The Gen 2 Neo series has lots more of these cameos, so let's keep finding them, starting first with Neo Genesis. Here's Heracross having a standoff with Pinsir in the foreground, as they're often depicted as natural rivals and are known to fight each other. This Heracross has the Pokemon power Final Blow, which doubles the damage of its Mega Horn attack if it has 20 HP or less. Although Final Blow isn't the name of any move or ability in the Pokemon games, its Japanese name is that of Reversal, which is a real attack and one that Heracross can learn. The less HP the user has, the more damage it does. Next are the last censored cards we'll be looking at in this series, and the first two feature the minigames from the Goldenrod Game Corner. The first shows the slot machines, or just one arcade game in the international version. The render was zoomed in to downplay the casino-esque layout of the Game Corner and focus solely on the game aspect. This is somewhat relevant here because without the new render of the game, it's harder to identify some of the Pokemon. Apart from the Vileplume on top and the Pikachu on the slots, the Pokemon are completely different from the Game Corner original. We see 3 Coughing, 2 more Vileplume, 2 Snorlax, and a Tangela. The card lets you shuffle your deck, then lay out the top 3 cards. If 2 of them match, you keep all 3, but if not, they go back in the deck. This would potentially make it better than the standard 2-card draw if not for the high dependence on luck. The second card depicts the other Game Corner game, Card Flip. This one also got a zoomed-in revision to its artwork, but the outlines of Pokemon are easily visible on both renders and match the original, with Pikachu, Jigglypuff, Poliwag, and Oddish. This card makes you guess if one of your opponent's prize cards is a Pokemon, Trainer, or Energy. If you guess correctly, you draw 2 cards. It's interesting to note that these 2 cards make up the Goldenrod Game Corner subclass of trainer cards, which was never utilized by any game mechanic but is by far the smallest trainer category the game has ever seen. The second smallest is the Rocket Secret Machine subclass with 11 cards, and coincidentally all but one of these contain cameos. And for the last censored card we have Moo Moo Milk, which originally gave us the slightly disturbing image of a Sentret sucking on the udder of a headless, limbless cow thing, which for some strange reason was completely changed outside of Japan, much like Misty's Tears. The new artwork sees a Cleffa entering a barn housing the Miltank branded item. Apparently the card was too traumatizing even for Japan because the reprint of Moo Moo Milk in the Japanese Versus set also uses this new artwork. The effect lets you flip 2 coins, and for each heads heals 20 damage from one of your Pokemon, which is the same as using a potion on average. Speaking of Miltank, there's a Tauros in the back of this card. Now here's an interesting situation. Usually Mantine is pictured with a Remoraid attached under its wing like a cleaner fish, which makes it less of a cameo and more like a part of Mantine's design, right? Well, let's take a look at a similar pairing of Pokemon. When a Slowpoke's tail gets bitten by Shelder, it evolves into Slowbro and the two remain together like that. But in the first Cameos video, I never counted Shelder as a cameo in any Slowbro cards. This is because the two are literally inseparable, because if they ever do get separated, Slowbro immediately devolves back into Slowpoke, not to mention the minor cosmetic differences you may have noticed between a normal Shelder and whatever this is. In contrast, Remoraid are free to come and go from Mantine as they please, which is why I'm counting their appearances as cameos. Anyway, here's Professor Elm. Being the Johto Pokemon Professor, he's holding the Fire-type starter Pokemon Cyndaquil. The card has a similar effect to Professor Oak, with the advantage of shuffling your hand into your deck instead of discarding it, but the disadvantage of being locked out of using any more trainers for the turn. Here's Machop putting on a Focus Band, along with some strange white outlines in the background that I didn't think were Pokemon at first. But on closer inspection, I realized this Machop is in an outdoor stadium in front of a crowd, and those outlines are actually pictures on a giant scoreboard. So it's safe to assume that that's his picture on the left and his opponent's is on the right. I have some guesses as to who it could be, but I won't say for sure. There's also a noticeable blank space below the English artwork from being placed too far upward in the frame, while the original Japanese print was aligned correctly. This card is a Pokemon tool, so it attaches to one of your Pokemon like a held item in the games. If the holder would be knocked out by your opponent's attack, you flip a coin, and if heads, that Pokemon survives with 10 HP instead. Sprout Tower appropriately features Bellsprout statues, Bellsprout head-shaped windows, and even a Bellsprout-shaped cloud. It depicts the named building in Violet City, which contains similar theming. Super Scoop Up shows a happy Magnemite escaping from battle. If you flip a coin and get heads, it lets you return one of your Pokemon and all cards attached to it into your hand. Double Gust depicts another battle scene, this time from the trainer's perspective. Looks like he's picking Hoppip to switch with Mareep, while Hoot Hoot encourages this and Sentry pretends to be asleep. Really great stuff. This card lets each player switch their opponent's active Pokemon with one of their opponent's bench Pokemon, kind of like a reverse escape rope. Pokemon March features Murkrow, Hoppip, Hoot Hoot, Cyndaquil, Chikorita, Sentret, Totodile, and Mareep all listening to the radio, as Pokemon March is one of the programs on the Pokegears radio. The card allows each player to search for a basic Pokemon and put it onto their bench. Last from Neo Genesis is Super Rod, showing the outline of a giant spiky fish that almost resembles a Magikarp. Depending on if you flip heads or tails, the card lets you reel in either a basic or evolution Pokemon respectively from your discard pile. The next set, Neo Discovery, has only 2 cameos, in English at least. The first is this Umbreon, where you can make out the top of a Lugia hieroglyph, but we aren't seeing the full picture here. There's another part of it on this Espeon card, but the complete illustration can be found on the back of the Japan-only Neo Premium File 2. Now we can see the full hieroglyphs of Lugia, Ho-Oh, and lots of Unknown. Although the Eevee from Neo Discovery didn't feature this artwork, a different Eevee from this file does, which means Unknown has some cameos here as well. The other English cameo card is Ruin Wall, showing the Kabuto puzzle from the Ruins of Alph. By completing the puzzle, players can encounter new types of Unknown, so naturally this card lets you search your deck for an Unknown and put it onto your bench. In the Japanese equivalent of Neo Discovery called Crossing the Ruins, there are actually 2 versions of this card, one with Kabuto and the other with Aerodactyl. Both cards also show lots of Unknown glyphs, and what looks like a Raichu's shadow on the wall. After Neo Discovery, we got a special promo set called the Southern Islands Collection, which was initially released 2 years earlier in Japan to coincide with the debut of the second Pokemon movie. The set was originally sold as both 9-card promo folders and 3-card box sets, but the English version combines all 18 cards into one decorated folder, along with postcards featuring the full artwork. Each illustration focuses on a particular region of the islands and is loaded with Pokemon. Out of the 18 total cards, only this Executor and this Vileplume are missing cameos. Starting with Tropical Island in the jungle region, we get Lickitung in a tree with Rattata and a Venonat that was cropped out of the Japanese version. Here's Primeape in another tree grabbing a Venomoth. At the beach, there's Slowking with a Psyduck and Bellsprout, and an Executor's foot that was tragically cropped out in Japan. To the right is Wartortle using Water Gun with a Horsey. In the sea, there's Lapras swimming with a Dratini, Meryl jumping out of the water with a Magikarp, and Tentacruel with the Dragonite flying by. Now on to Rainbow Island in the Sky region. There's Mew flying with a Pidgeot and a Charizard in the background. Here's the rest of Pidgeot next to Mew with an Onix and Venonat behind them. And here's Onix with Pidgeot, Venonat, Dragonite, and a Golem that's just barely visible in the Japanese version. At the riverside, we have Togepi on a rainbow leaf next to Ivysaur, Pikachu, and Wartortle. There's Ivysaur with bits of Togepi, Pikachu, Slowpoke, and Raticate visible. And there's Raticate on a rainbow tree next to Ivysaur and Slowpoke. Lastly, in the Field of Flowers, there's Ladybug flying above an Executor, Dodrio, and Jigglypuff. Here's Jigglypuff sitting on a rainbow flower bed with Dodrio, Weepinbell, and the very edge of a Butterfree's wing in the background. And there's Butterfree carrying flowers with Venomoth, Mankey, and the tips of Jigglypuff and Meowth visible as well. Well, I think that's all of them, so let's get back to the Neo series with the third set, Neo Revelation. Up first is another 3 cards with shared artwork, this time from the Neo Premium File 3. But unlike the Umbreon, Espeon, and Eevee from earlier, all 3 of them were included in the English set, and all of them contain cameos. Both Lugia and Skarmory have Ho-Oh's wings in the corners, and Ho-Oh has both of theirs on either side. Next is Pokemon Breeder Fields, featuring Sunflora and a Dragonite. The card's original Japanese name reveals it's based on the Pokemon Daycare found on Route 34. The effect lets you flip a coin for up to 2 of your evolving Pokemon. For each head, search your deck for a later stage evolution card and put it into your hand. Now, if you're familiar with the card game, you may have noticed that this card fails to mention you need to show the cards you've taken out of your deck to your opponent before putting them into your hand. This is an important step to take whenever a player is only allowed to search for specific types of cards, since without your opponent verifying them, you could take any cards you wanted. Unsurprisingly, this was one of many translation errors by Wizards of the Coast, and you still have to play the card as originally intended. Rocket's Hideout featuring Gengar is another interesting one. Its effect gives Dark Pokemon 20 more HP, even though at the time there hadn't been any new Dark Pokemon since their introduction back in Team Rocket. This seemingly out-of-place inclusion may have been in anticipation of the next set where Dark Pokemon made their return, or because in Japan, this Dark Raichu card was introduced in their previous set. Dark Raichu was initially made specifically for the English Team Rocket set as the first ever secret rare card, and was probably added into Crossing the Ruins a few months later. Moving on to Neo Destiny, there's another Mantine with a Remoraid on its wing. This unknown card has a shadow in the corner there, which could be a Pokemon, but it's not obvious enough to say for sure. My guess is that it's the same Raichu from the Ruin Wall cards, as they are also set in the Ruins of Alph and were made by the same artist. Next are some light Pokemon, starting with Piloswine surrounded by Swinub. Here's Jolteon watching over a sleeping Togepi and Rattata, and here's Wigglytuff in a grassy field with a Caterpie. Broken Ground Gym shows an Elekid and Cleffa stuck between the jagged terrain. The effect makes each player pay 1 more energy to retreat a basic Pokemon or baby Pokemon, which is probably why they're struggling. Radio Tower is based on the building of the same name found in Goldenrod City and features a giant Meowth balloon. Here's Thought Wave Machine. Not sure what's going on here, but there's a Ditto and Wobbuffet. Magnifier shows a scope targeting a Zubat. Its Japanese name is that of Scope Lens, which is an item introduced in Gen 2 that increases a Pokemon's chances of getting critical hits. The card has a similar idea, letting your attacking Pokemon ignore any resistances for a turn. Pokemon Personality Test features a very mean Azumarill scaring a huge Rhydon, and the card's effect is similar to the Blaine's quizzes from the gym sets. You choose an evolution card from your hand, and your opponent guesses whether it's a light Pokemon, dark Pokemon, or neither. If they're right, they draw 3 cards, but if they're wrong, you draw 3 cards. And the last cameo from the Neo series comes from Lucky Stadium. There are many different variations of this card, each with different artwork featuring different Pokemon and landmarks. Most of them were only awarded to Japanese tournament participants, but we got one in this set featuring Imakuni and 2 Doduo. And don't worry, I'll make a video on those other variants and all the other exclusive Japanese promo cameos sometime. For now though, Well, looks like I missed computer search from base set, which lets you discard 2 cards from your hand, then search your deck for any card. Notice how you don't have to show the card to your opponent in this case since you're allowed to get anything. I actually only realized that Magnemite was there when I saw this card, which actually isn't using the same render. Instead, it's a very faithful, high-quality recreation of the original, and the extra resolution and contrast makes the Magnemite more obvious. Anyway, I hope you found some of that interesting, and thank you for watching.